Once again, welcome back to the program. ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੀਂ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਕਪਲਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਬੈਟਰ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਾਜ਼ੇਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਸਟਰ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੇਟਰ ਹਨ ਵਰਚੂਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਦੇ, ਉਹ ਆ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਸੈਕਸ਼ੂਅਲ ਅਤੇ ਇਮੋਸ਼ਨਲ ਬੌਂਡਿੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਕਾਰਨ ਤਰੇੜਾਂ ਪੈ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪਸ ਲੰਮੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੱਕ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਇਹ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਰੈਮੇਡੀਜ਼ ਹਨ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਾਂਗੇ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਾਜ਼ੇਬ ਤੋਂ। Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Harpreet.
Thank you. So today, like last week, we discussed about the reasons for not having a stronger emotional and sexual bonding between the couples. So today, I would like if you can, with your experience, let us know that you deal with the people, you guide them as to how to, remedy all these problems, because the problems do exist, but of course, there's a solution for everything. So if you can let us know as to how we can walk on this path and have a successful marriage life.
Right. So people come to me because they're not connecting with their partner. They're feeling distant, they're not communicating, or if they're communicating, they're arguing or fighting. And that's very painful in a relationship. So people, want to see if they can resolve this. The lack of, we're going to talk about what gets in the way of intimacy.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about what is intimacy.
Right.
So intimacy is really a sense that I am known by you and you are known by me.
Okay.
So we know each other intimately. That's really intimacy.
Okay. Now, many a times intimacy is just taken from that angle, from that sexual angle only, that you are close to each other physically.
Right.
So intimacy is much more than just this thing.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you can be intimate with a friend or with your child. Right. There's a sense of closeness and connection.
Right.
An emotional connection. That's intimacy.
Right.
That's what we all want in our relations. That's kind of that deep sense of I'm connected with you.
Okay.
Sexual intimacy is something different. People can be having sex and not be intimate. Right? So there's a lot of casual sex that goes on. It's not intimate, nor do people feel connected or close. So it can be very superficial. So we do have to separate out the two things.
So it should not be just sensual gratification. That's what you're saying. That intimacy, that level of being with each other emotionally has to be there, along with the physical element has to be there.
I think for people to feel a sense of real satisfaction, that their relationship is really nurturing them.
Right.
I hear this from women a lot, but men want it too, just as much, that they need to feel connected. That's really women's number one thing, is they want that intimacy.
So what comes in between that closeness, what you're talking about, that understanding, that being together, and as you said, women always are complaining about this, that the sexual gratification is just there, but that closeness is not there.
Right.
So what comes in the way, basically?
Right. Well, I think it's first of all, our lack of awareness that there can be more emotional connection. We may be imitating what we've seen in our families, and we're just doing what we've always done and not realizing that there's more to be had in terms of intimacy in a relationship and feeling connected. So what happens, Harpreet, in every close relationship, if you're in relationship with anyone for any period of time, there's going to be injury that happens to the relationship. You're going to say something that's going to hurt the other person. And if you can imagine, it's like throwing a little handful of dirt between the two of you.
Right.
Sometimes if there's a big injury, if we do something to really hurt the other person emotionally, it's like, a wheelbarrow of dirt or a dump truck of dirt, and before you know it, you have this pile between you, and you have this barrier between you, and you can't really see over it. So what I help couples to do is to sweep away the injuries that have happened, accumulated over time. The longer we're in relationship, probably the more dirt there is,
Many times everything is taken for granted also. Does that also deter that relationship?
Well, I think it can be an injury. It can be one form of injury because everyone wants to be appreciated and validated and acknowledged. That helps us to feel loved and to feel, that we are important and we matter to that person. So if we're not appreciating, if we're just taking for granted, as you say, then that can be a form of injury to the relationship.
Okay. So what are the other things also which come in the way of this intimacy?
A big one is not having a good capacity for listening.
Okay.
Because how do we know one another without communicating? Right? So if we're not sharing parts of ourselves, what we're going through or what our fears are or what our hopes and aspirations are, but just having a general dialogue on an ongoing basis. If we're not being heard, then we're feeling shut out and we're feeling disconnected.
Now, in this, with your experience dealing with the people, do you find that men are a little bit more hesitant in opening up even with their intimate partners?
Well, Harpreet, I think men have been socialized to be really good problem solvers. And they feel that that's their job, is to problem solve, right? Whereas women, very often what we're needing is just to be listened to. We just want to share with our partners whatever it is we're going through and feel that you understand. We don't necessarily want the problem to be solved. We just want you to be an intimate partner in our lives.
Have a shoulder to lean upon.
That's right. That's right. But not in a way that burdens, right? And this is another thing that I think that happens in relationships is that it can become lopsided, where one partner is relying too much on the other for one thing or another, and that can become an injury to the relationship. So again, it needs to be talked about and some resolution and more balance. So whether it's the woman, maybe there's a couple who they're both working in the workforce, but the woman, for example, is still doing, a huge amount at home. And she feels that there's some imbalance and it's not fair. She's feeling overburdened. Okay, so there's an imbalance. It could be another couple where the woman is staying a long time at home taking care of the kids and the husband is feeling overburdened financially. So there's a way that we need to bring forward this idea of taking care of ourselves as individuals and also taking care of the relationship. When it's being imbalanced, we need to figure out what remedies does this relationship need. But we can't do that without talking to each other.
That's right. You always emphasize upon this particular aspect that we are spiritual beings and we need to understand each other's spirituality. Spirituality is the foundation and the base. So in this, what do you find? Is spirituality actually having any space in our lives today in this fast-paced life where everybody is running around? So does this factor also count? And if not, what needs to be done to inculcate those spiritual values so that you consider each other as equal, you consider the other person, you do not demean anyone, or rather you understand each other, you live with each other and enjoy physically as well as, emotionally.
Right. Yes, well, I think this is a big part of the transition that we're going through right now. Human rights, rights for women and children all around the world have had a big light shone on it in the last, 50, 60 years. We're going through a real transition in this way in our societies. And people are, women are expecting and wanting that equality. And yet I think both men and women are still adjusting themselves to what that looks like. So it doesn't mean equality of role. It means equality of opportunities and respect. That my voice counts in this relationship and that we consult together, that we together problem solve and make decisions together. I think that's one of the really key issues around equality for men and women today.
Okay. When you interact with men and women in your workshops, what are the major hindrances which are brought forward by the people? If you could give us some examples about that.
Well, I think typically, and it's true, you hear that money and sex are two really big issues for couples. And I think it's because, again, that's the one relationship that we have those two things so much a part of our relationship. the sex part is the uniquely part of that relationship, and then we're melding our finances, and we're, if one person is an overspender or is being irresponsible with money, then that's going to impact the other person.
And then the blame game starts.
Right. And so it's a security issue.
Right.
Money has to do with our sense of security.
Right.
And so it touches us at a very deep level.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're not in harmony with that, if we're not being responsible and doing things together to create the vision for our marriage, like where do we want to go? What do we want to do with our money?
Right.
Then again, it's something that needs
Problems
to be addressed.
Start. When you talk about vision, I would like to, elaborate more on this after this break. We'll go for a break, come back and talk as to what kind of vision you can create for yourself, for your marriage and for your partner. जो ਹੁਣ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋਈ ਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਾ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਇੰਟੀਮੇਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਐਂਡ ਵਾਈਫ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁੱਖ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੈਲੀ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੈਸਾ ਅਤੇ ਸੈਕਸ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਪਰ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲ ਐਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਫਾਊਂਡੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਛੱਡ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਦੌੜ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਰ ਪਾਸੇ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਭੱਜ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਮਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਿਕਲਦਾ ਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲਿਸਨਿੰਗ ਸਕਿੱਲਸ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੌਲੀ ਹੌਲੀ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਵਧੀਆਂ ਬਲੇਮ ਗੇਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੈ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਅੜਚਨਾਂ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਕਸੈਸਫੁਲ ਮੈਰਿਜ ਲਾਈਫ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਬੇਸਡ ਔਨ ਦ ਫਾਊਂਡੇਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਅਤੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਡਿਟਰੈਂਟ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਓ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਰੁਖ ਤੇ ਤੁਰ ਕੇ ਉਸ ਰਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਰ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੁਸ਼ਹਾਲੀ ਲਿਆ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਲੰਮੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੱਕ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਮੈਰਿਜ ਦਾ ਆਨੰਦ ਮਾਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਜੀ So when we talk about the vision, we talked about the impediments which stop us and which create problems, the ego problem, the money problem, the sexual desires not being fulfilled. These are the basic issues. But also, you talked about the communication level, the skills, listening skills. Today, that's again a major crisis in the world. Nobody wants to listen to anyone because everybody thinks they know more than the other person. And there's the ego clash, and once the ego clash starts, then of course everything crumbles.
Very true.
So over here, when you talk about the listening skills and communication skills, if you could just elaborate a little bit on this, and then I would like to talk about the vision also.
Sure. So communication skills can be learned. That's the good news. Is that we need to be aware and take a look at, ask ourselves, am I a good listener? Do I take the time to try to understand the other person and what they're saying? I teach in my classes and we go through it very methodically. What does it mean to not be a good listener? So people who first and foremost are not present, they're not with you. They're kind of, just, looking somewhere else. You can tell when a person is present with you. So we do need to bring our presence. The distractibility and the stress level that we're all under, that can be challenging for us to be present in our relationships, and yet that is what we need to work towards, is taking that time.
Okay.
Our relationships need to be nurtured just like a plant needs water. Relationships need time, and that quality time, I believe, is a lot about communication.
So what ingredients, like you talked about communication and listening, what other ingredients are required to nurture that relationship?
Well, let's talk more about the listening.
Okay.
And it does nurture the relationship too. There's a couple of really powerful questions. And if you just ask them, first of all, have an attitude of curiosity. Okay, so we talked earlier about how sometimes men and women too, but we mistakenly think that we need to fix problems or come up with solutions. But what we're really doing when we do that is we're disrespecting the other person, because then we're saying, I know better than you for your life. So if we take away that responsibility for the other person, just I'll be responsible for myself, you'll be responsible for yourself, and I'll be curious about what's going on for you. So the two magic questions that we ask are what and how. They're curious questions. So if your wife comes home and says, I had a terrible day, you can ask a curious question. Well, what was terrible about it? And then you listen for the answer.
Right.
You know, and she says, well, you know, just nothing went right. You know, I got stuck in traffic and I was late, and then my boss was this, and you know, you can ask a curious question. Well, what was the hardest part about your day?
Right.
What
So
was
to
it? Being curious.
involve yourself, right?
It's being curious,
Right.
and taking some time to understand.
And rather than just shunning away and saying, I also faced the same thing today.
Right, and that's a sign of not listening well,
Right.
because then we make it about ourselves. We turn it back to us.
Right.
A good listener pays attention to the speaker and allows the attention to be on the speaker.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I would like to cover this topic. It's quite exhaustive, and
Yes, it
we
is.
like to talk in details about as to how those communication and listening skills can be imbibed in one's life.
Yes.
On the other hand, when we talk about a vision, despite these impediments, of course, if you want to succeed in anything, we have a plan in life. So to make your marriage life also stable and sustainable, I would say, what do you say? What should be the vision? How can you plan a vision?
Well, I think a young person comes into their marriage life with a certain vision for what they hope.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I think everybody, what they want is a happiness.
Absolutely.
You know, and they want a long-term, lasting relationship. But beyond that, when we are together as a couple, to spend some time getting more clear and detailed about what is our vision for ourselves.
Right.
What do we want to see now and in our future? Making some short and medium and long-term goals together.
Okay.
Because without doing that, we kind of just get caught up in the day-to-day life, and it becomes very routine, and we don't necessarily feel fulfilled. But together, you know, as a couple, we want to be supporting each other
Right.
in fulfilling our potential, whether it's through education, whether it's through work, whether it's through, you know, opportunities. But to have those kinds of discussions, and it comes back to intimacy. I
Right.
think when we share our vision for each other, what we'd like to see, whether it's very specifically, like say in our intimate life together, what would we like to see? What would we like it to be like?
Right.
Or, you know, what would we like to be doing in 10 years' time? That creates intimacy. It
Right.
creates a sense of I know you and you know me, and together we're in this together, and we're going to build this life together.
Okay. So that is again through talking to
Yes.
each other and setting up your goals, short term, long term, and medium term, as you said. Now, in this also, because when you talk about vision, everyone has a different vision. But aligning both visions together, and there might be many instances where you have to give and take, because
Sure.
every time if we just want our thought to be prevalent, then again the ego clashes there, and that's
Right.
how the fights start, and then it
Right.
leads to separation also.
Right.
So while you are framing this dialogue and you are talking to each other, again with your experience, if you can let us know as to during that time what things should be kept in mind, because you're creating a vision, a
Yes.
permanent kind of future planning what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in that thing, what should be kept in mind?
Well, again, if we bring in the virtues language, I think the quality of fairness, you know, that both parties are considered, you know, that both people's goals, aspirations, what they hope for is considered.
Right.
Like you said, there's often a give and take, and there's negotiation and compromise that always has to happen in a marriage relationship. But that if you feel that you're on each other's side, that I'm for you, I
Right.
want you to feel fulfilled, I want you to fill your potential. And if both parties feel that from each other, that's part of that secure attachment and bonding that we have, that I've got your back and you've got mine, and I'm cheering for you. So that's the message we really want to be giving one another.
Right. So that message which has to be given again in this, you have to be particular, and you have to shed your egos, because right now in today's world what's happening is that both husband and wife are earning, and because of that financial security, many a times that also becomes a cause of separation also. Because earlier times, mostly the women were dependent upon men, and their job was to look after the home, and the husband used
Right.
to take the outside. But today,
That's right.
everyone is contributing to the house. So keeping the changes in mind, what's happening in the society today,
Yeah.
over there also at a time when you are not able to understand the basics, and you are thinking that you are contributing financially, how big is an impediment that also becomes, you feel, that should be looked into?
Well, Harpreet, I think the key is to bring what is happening in your relationship to the table.
Right.
For dialogue and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a capacity for problem solving together.
Right.
Again, these are tools and skills that can be learned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going around and around in circles, conflicting and not resolving anything,
mm-hmm.
then you've got a communication problem.
Right.
So couples need to learn to have healthy dialogue, how to resolve those conflicts, because they will be there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm talking very ideally when
mm-hmm.
I say, you know, this is ideal,
right.
that we have this vision and that we support one another. The reality is
mm-hmm.
we get tested in our ability to support the other and to let ourselves take the back seat while the other person might, you know, right. get the forefront for a little while and,
mm-hmm.
you know, give and take. You know,
right.
it's challenging for us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have a way to bring the issues to the table
mm-hmm.
and talk about them in a way that is not damaging to
right.
the relationship, then you can work through things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the issue that you bring up is one, and there's many, many, many others. And so
right.
I think the key is for a couple to be able to bring their issues together mm-hmm. to the table. If they're having struggle, get a third party
right.
to support them. You know, go to a good counselor, therapist, someone who can support you. This is what I do with individuals and couples, is to help
right.
help develop their ability to connect, communicate, work through things.
And again, over here, the virtues which one has incorporated in one's life will play a very dominant role, and they can guide you and help you in whatever decision you are making. And provided your, you know, that sector is filled up with spiritual values.
Yeah, well, it's our character,
mm-hmm.
right, that we
Absolutely.
bring into the relationship.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਵਿਸ਼ੇ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਕੈਲੀ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੀ ਹੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਅਤੇ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੁਕਾਵਟਾਂ ਬਣਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਸੁਝਾਅ ਵੀ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਸ ਸਮੱਸਿਆ ਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਲੱਭਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਐਮਫਸਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਦੋ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਧਿਆਨ ਮੰਗਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਲਿਸਨਿੰਗ ਸਕਿੱਲਸ, ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਨਾ। ਦੂਸਰੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ। ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਮਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਬਿਠਾ ਕੇ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਸੁਲਝਾਅ, ਉਸ ਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਭੇਗਾ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਕ੍ਰੋਸ ਦ ਟੇਬਲ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਣ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਰੁਕਾਵਟਾਂ ਬਣ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਾਰਟ ਟਰਮ, ਮੀਡੀਅਮ ਟਰਮ ਅਤੇ ਲੌਂਗ ਟਰਮ ਕੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ, ਕਿਵੇਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਿਹਤਰੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕੋਈ ਕਮੀਆਂ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਰਲ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਕੁਝ ਨਾ ਕੁਝ ਬਿਹਤਰੀ ਲਿਆਈ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ। ਆਸ ਕਰਨੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕੁਝ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਸੇਧ ਮਿਲੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਮ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੁਣਨ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਵੱਧਦੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਤਰੇੜਾਂ ਪੈ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੀ ਰੋਕ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਇਲੌਗ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਲੱਭਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ। ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਲਈ 604 603 7555 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਈਮੇਲ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ harpreetsingh@gmail.com। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ youtube.com/harpreetsingh ਦੇ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਅਤੇ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਰਸ ਦੇ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਦੌਲਤ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਥਰੂ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਮੈਂਟ ਜਾਂ ਸਪਾਂਸਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੋ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋ ਸਕੀਏ। ਫਿਰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਤਦ ਤੱਕ ਗੁੱਡ ਬਾਏ।